Hey everybody, welcome back. We're continuing our reading of Purification of the Heart. It's Hamza Yusuf's book. It's his commentary of the Imam al-Mawlud's Matharat al Qulub. So let's continue. We were dealing with a poem about purification of the heart concerning envy. Okay? And it was verses 59 through 62. Let's pick up on page 30. And now he's going to get into the treatment. Alright, so let's see what he says. Imam Mawlud prescribes two cures for envy. The first is to consciously act in opposition to one's caprice. The Arabic term here for caprice, hawa, is derived from the Arabic word that means to fall. Okay, so how do you stand in opposition? That's a tricky one, though. I mean, I've been practicing, right? Getting pretty good, but some of us think we're not ever envious until it's in our face, right? So it also related to the Arabic word for wind. So to fall wind. See, what's really cool about this book too is that it's really helping just explain the nuances and layers of Arabic language. Because I have to say, there's some weird thing that we have when we see it's cursive is seen as elegant if you write in English, but if you write in Arabic, people think because of the shapes that it's simple, right? Which is really interesting when you think about people who study language and how humans perceive words. It's quite astounding. Yet if you see Chinese or Japanese, people see something like, oh, complex. Not all people, but some people, right? So wind and to fall. Hawa. Nice. One's passion is like the wind. It kind of blows you around, doesn't it? Whisks you away with a gust. Like lust kind of can feel like a gust that just rushes in and then leaves, and you're like, oh, that's over, right? In that it comes, stirs up emotion, and then dies down. One cannot really see it, only its effect. Yeah, exactly. Yes, it does. It's like a tornado. Or just kind of whoosh, and then fleeting, just leaves. More often than not, following one's whims takes a person away from the truth. Okay, so whims is a perfect contrast for wind, right? Because whims is denotes a sort of breezy behavior, right? This sort of willowing, fluttering wind. It's quite interesting. The history of humanity is replete with false notions that have come and gone. The truth, however, is something that is fixed and that can be recognized as such. Hopefully, right? If one is truly objective. Ooh, that's right. Oh, don't have your biases, you're being objective, just look at the truth. As for caprice, it has no foundation. For this reason, Imam Mawlud says one must resist his caprice. That's hard. The Quran repeatedly warns against following one's caprice. It speaks of bygone communities who grew arrogant when God's messengers came to them with admonitions and teachings that did not agree with their soul's caprice. Yeah. It's okay, so that's a good example of that's true. We learn that a lot in the Quran. But it's interesting how, it is hard to reform those habits, right? And to fight against that. So they rejected the message and even killed the messengers. Quran 570. Also, God praises those who resist the caprices of their souls and promises them paradise. Quran 79:40. Think of that when someone's tempting you, right? And to be like, no, man, it's not worth it. One of the names of hell mentioned in the Quran is Hawiya. Quran 101:9, which is derived from the same root as Hawd. Perhaps the connection is that a person enslaved to his whims descends into the depths of depravity in this life, and as a consequence, he faces perdition in the hereafter. Okay, so you want to know something interesting? I'm going to share it. but I think it's really relevant. I once had a dream where I fell down a chute. I don't know if you've seen these, but you think of like in the laundry rooms. You used even in houses, you could open the door down and put your clothes in, and it would go down a chute, kind of like a male thing. I had a dream where I was that, and I fell on top of a bunch of dead bodies in a pit, and I had to climb on top of all these mangled, rotten corpses. I had to climb through mud, and I was chasing a ship that was leaving a dock. This was a dream I had like maybe 15 years ago, but I still remember it so vivid. Um, and that's when I was in the height of my lust, right? So think of like the romanticized thing that blew my mind is like in this dimension you see it beautified, all these beautiful bodies, like an orgy scene people think of, right? This sort of romanticized scene that the industry puts in our heads and we try to amplify when we go to certain parties or buildings, right? But in my dreams, you have had a horrible reality. So me, I was following my whims, doing whatever I want. No one could tell me anything. Very atheistic, just raging. And it's interesting, to analyze that now. So it's quite astounding that he's telling us, explaining it further for us, building upon the Quran, the poetry, and then his own thoughts about how caprices, we have to resist it. And if we don't, we are going to have some punishments that really will show us the error of our ways, right? So, yes, you definitely have to be careful that you don't get blown about. Sometimes we think of whims as like a leaf blowing in the wind and it's gonna land on a nice pile or float in a nice creek, but in reality it just goes in the road and gets crushed by the tire, right? But it's an interesting thing to think about. What do you think, man? As a remedy to the type of envy that prods one to bring about harm to another person, Imam Maulud suggests that one contradict his temptation, that is, to do something that will benefit the person who is envied. Okay, so I didn't envy the person, but however, I did do something similar in this behavior that he's talking about. Like you flip it, like you go against your own inclination. Like there's a chick who's really mean. I had an opportunity to give her a nice sour taste of vinegar. Just really give it to her in a quick way that I wouldn't have gotten in trouble with the manager, right? But I didn't, and instead I chose to give her a compliment and tell her how hard she worked. Because I saw she was vulnerable, so I could have pounced, but I didn't. And I was instead something kind. And even several days after, she continued her previous rude behavior, so my action didn't stop her from continuing a behavior that made me want to lash out at her, but instead I just did the right thing and was like, nah, I'm just gonna say something kind, right? She's bad, but not that bad. Do you know what I'm saying? So this whole idea of doing that can help. I mean, I've tried it, so you could try it too. This is obviously for envy, but I used it for a tense attention, like a thick, just kind of energy you can feel with somebody where it's like, and I decided instead of me, I did, right? So it was interesting. What do you think, fam? For example, give that person a gift or do a favor. Okay. I think people have tried to do that with me before. I once had somebody who I was rude to them. They could see we weren't in a good relationship, and they gave me it was like a tea set. I put it in the recycle bin like a year later because I didn't have the space for it, but it was still a kind action. Sometimes people do that. There was one girl, I regret how mean I was to her, and I was envious a little bit of her for some bonuses she got. She didn't get yelled at as much. It was stupid. But she went and bought me a pair of earrings and gave it to me. And I was like, why are you giving me this gift? And then I felt really bad, and I changed my behavior slightly after that. Like, dang, man, I was mean to her. And she's not a good worker, but it's not her fault. She just wasn't trained right. She's kind of ditzy, kind of slow. Shouldn't be so mean. And she flipped it. She gave me a gift of earrings, and I never wore them. No idea where they went, but they were from a little boutique shop. And I was like, dang, man, she bought me a pair of earrings. You know, like, it's a good point. It's a good book. It really makes me give it like personal examples in my own life. So, what are some of the examples that you have that you'd be willing to share? Let me know.